Welcome. I'm Rabbi Robin Frisch, and this is the Mazel Pups podcast. If you're Jewish or Jewish, however you define it, and you love dogs, this is the podcast for you. So many of the people that I've interviewed on this podcast, I've come to get to know them through our common love for dogs. Today's guest is someone who clearly loves dogs, but I've met her and got to know her in a way that I more typically, as a rabbi, get to know people through a life cycle event. And I was very fortunate when Rachael-Nelson Smith, today's guest, got in touch with me to ask me to officiate the naming of her first daughter. And then I had the pleasure just a few months ago to officiate the naming of her second daughter. And on top of those two wonderful life cycle events, I officiated this past year her sister's wedding, which Rachel and her husband Jason and the two daughters all walked down the aisle together at the wedding, which was really beautiful. And I know that we are here to talk to Rachel today about her role as a veterinarian, but I do just want to say as an aside, Rachel and Jason have the most gorgeous, adorable little daughters. So even though we won't get to focus on them much today, I just feel like I have to mention how cute they are and how much fun it was for me to be part of those significant events in their family's life. But we are here today to talk, of course, about dogs, and that's why we have Rachael-Nelson Smith here. She is a veterinarian. Not many people know more about dogs, I would imagine, than veterinarians. She attended the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine, and now she is part of a veterinary practice in Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. So, Rachel, I want to welcome you. It is so wonderful to see you. One of the few times we've talked that it hasn't been initially about naming a child. So obviously we'll be talking about something very different today. And we're going to start with our lightning round. I'm going to ask you the same questions I ask all my guests. First of all, do you currently have a dog?
I do. I have Penny, who is a 5-year-old Maltese poodle mix.
So she's your oldest child at this
She
point.
sure is. My
And
first baby.
can you
Yeah.
tell us a fun fact about this first baby of yours and Jason's?
Yes, Penny loves to watch TV like just like a human. She'll sit there and stare at the TV. A dog comes on the TV, like cartoon dog even, and she is up at the TV jumping and barking and totally reacting to it.
I love that. So does she have any favorite shows beyond the ones that have dogs in them?
That's a great question. She doesn't really.
Is she
Can't
happy
watch
to watch what
anything.
you're watching?
Yeah, we can't watch anything with dogs in it because she goes so wild, or
That
any
is
animal really
hysterical.
for that matter.
That is really cute. Switching for a moment from dogs to Judaism, what do you like most about Judaism?
I think just like following through with all of the traditions and all of the connections that I've made and friends that I've made with other people who are Jewish, just because we share Judaism.
Great, thank you. And what is your favorite Jewish holiday?
I'm gonna say Passover because I love the matzo ball soup.
As long as you don't say I love matzah, though. I always like it the first few days. Okay, so now we're going to get to the heart of your interview. But before asking you about being a vet, obviously you have a dog now, you have Penny. But before that, did you have dogs or other pets growing up?
I did. I grew up with a Bernese Mountain Dog, was the first dog that we ever had, and my parents got, which they got Shadow was his name when I was like 5 or 6. And the reason they
Wow.
got him is because I was terrified of dogs. So they wanted to get a dog so that I wouldn't grow up being scared of dogs all the time. Um,
So they
I
went all out and got a giant dog.
exactly. My mom loves to tell the story about how when they brought the dog home, I was expecting like this cute little fluffy puppy, and they walked in with the dog, and I just broke out in tears because they brought home this like the dog was already like 15 pounds, like giant
Wow.
dog, and I was terrified of him.
And that could have been part of why you ultimately became a vet. Had they not done that, who knows?
Here we are. Yep.
So, so on a related question, have you always wanted to be a vet, or is that something that came later in life? Like, were you one of those kids who grew up, probably not before you got that dog, but if assuming you did fall in love with that dog?
No, not at all. I always wanted to be a doctor. My grandfather was a doctor. He was an ophthalmologist. My both of my parents are optometrists, so they're eye doctors. So being some sort of doctor was always in the cards for me. But then in college, I sort of accidentally fell into the veterinary world. I ha just so happened to get a job in a lab, a research lab on campus studying cows. And I had never thought about vet school, but kind of decided to explore it at that point and just fell in love with the field.
Wow. So I'm sure there are many mistakes that pet parents make. I'm sure hopefully there are things we do well also. But can you tell us the top three mistakes that you see pet parents make?
Sure. So we'll start with, I guess we'll start with number one. I think the biggest and most frequent mistake I see people make is feeding incomplete and unbalanced diets. I have tons of clients, tons of people who are home cooking for their pets. They're feeding chicken and rice or turkey and rice or whatever it might be long term, and they think that they're doing the best thing for their dogs. But really, if that's what you're doing, you're missing essential ingredients that your dog or your pet needs to have. So really home cooking, unless you have a board certified nutritionist involved with creating the diet, you're most likely going to be missing things that your pet needs. So in the long run, really is not the best thing for your pet, even though they may love to eat whatever it is that you're cooking for them.
Do you have a sense of why people are doing that? I'm sure they think they're doing it to help their dog. I'm sure they have
Yeah,
good
I think there's
intent, but
a couple of reasons. I think dogs like when when we give them something a little bit extra special, and then they see their dog eating well and they give them whatever it is they're giving, so they keep doing it and they sort of train us a little bit. And I think the bigger reason is there's a lot of these smaller companies coming out with like their fresh foods
mhm,
and human grade quality foods or what have you, which is just a big trend. And I think a lot of people are getting kind of caught up in that. So I think it's hard for us to realize that animals are animals, and like the kibble that we've been feeding them for years and years and years is good, and that's why it's still around. And a lot of these like newer fresh food companies might not be bad, but what I tell my clients is that I just don't know. They haven't been around long
right.
enough, they haven't been studied enough, so I just don't know enough to confidently tell you that they're okay. But we do know that home cooking and just feeding your pet, chicken and rice and what some vegetables, that you're going to be missing important ingredients.
Interesting. So
Um,
let's say you do feed your dog kibble,
mhm.
and I know some people, maybe myself included, like to maybe give them a little treat from the table, a little bit of table food, or once in a while a puppuccino from Starbucks. Is that, I mean, obviously you shouldn't be doing it all the time, and then I can't imagine it's good for the dog. But in general, is it better to really keep a dog just to dog food, or is it okay to give them some treats?
Totally okay to give treats, and you should. I mean, you have to balance things just like you do for yourself. The general rule of thumb is that treats and things on top of your dog's kibble should be 10% or less of their overall intake. So you can use that as kind of a guideline, but of course you can and should give your dog special treats from
Okay,
time to
good.
time. The other big thing is feeding raw diets. I have a lot of people who think raw diets are really helpful, but they just, for me, they carry too many risks to both your pet and to you. Too many potential diseases that you or your pet could pick up from it. So it's a no for me.
That could be true of humans too. I know people
Yep.
are on raw diets and their doctors are telling them it might not be the greatest thing for you just to eat raw food. So it seems like we're doing the same things to our dogs that we're doing to ourselves. Soon they'll be getting Ozempic when they're overweight. Um, so what are some other things we want parents of dogs that they should know or that they're
So
doing wrong?
yeah, so I think my second biggest thing would be not giving flea, tick, and heartworm prevention on a year-round basis. With global warming, and there's this big move over the past couple of years to bring dogs that are rescued down south up north. We're seeing more and more heartworm disease in this area in the Northeast and really all throughout the country. It is in every state now. Um, we're just seeing it more and more frequently, and we can see it all year round. So it's really important. Ticks and fleas also around all year round now. Every single winter, I see a cat come in who I know we're talking about
That's
dogs,
okay.
but cats, stay in their houses. And every winter, I see a cat come in who the owner swears up and down has never left the house, but the cat is covered in fleas.
Wow.
So it's a
Wow.
big one. I would recommend doing it every month,
And that
long
you mean
term.
like the depending on the dog, like I know my dogs take pills for that, like next guard and heart guard
Yeah,
and next something.
I really like the oral ones. I think we are seeing a lot of resistance to some of the topical flea preventions. Like Frontline's just been around for so many years that the fleas are starting to be resistant, and I just have
Wow.
seen lots of animals where the owners again swear up and down they've been using Frontline on a regular basis, but the dogs still come in with fleas, visible fleas on them. So I urge all my clients to use the oral preventatives, which really work a lot better.
And do you see it all? And I've heard once in a while dog parents say this to me. It's uncommon, but it's almost like an anti-vaxxer attitude of like, my dog doesn't need extra things like that. I'm just going to give my dog a healthy diet and we're okay.
Yes, I do get that a lot. And then I've also see those same clients come in and freak out when we find a flea on their pet. It's so much easier to prevent your animal from getting fleas or tick-borne illnesses or heartworms than to treat it later on.
So that's number two. What is the third thing you see that pet parents are doing, another mistake that they make? I'm sure you could go on and on, but we'll stick
Yeah.
to three for today.
Number three, I would say, is not having pet insurance or at least some kind of fund or backup plan for if and when your pet is having an emergency. Certainly wellness visits, vaccines, things like that add up. But where I see people really running into issues is when they end up in the ER for their dog ate a foreign body and needs life-saving surgery, or their dog tore their ACL and now needs a $6,000 surgery to be able to walk and live comfortably. I've just seen too many pets and owners have to make too many hard decisions just because they haven't planned for what could happen. So whether that's having pet insurance or just setting aside X amount of money every month for your pet for if and when one day you end up in the ER, I think it's super important.
And I assume you can't get pet insurance if your dog has particular pre-existing conditions. It wouldn't cover those, just like people. Is that?
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah.
I will say I am embarrassed to say this, but I will say I'm one of those people who doesn't have pet insurance. I wish I did. One of my dogs, after I had just spent, even with dental insurance, a fortune at a periodontist on my teeth and gums, about 2 weeks later, we found out that he had to have a few teeth removed, which that wasn't outrageously expensive, but the anesthesia was. And I think it was something like $5,000 for him just to have a few teeth removed. And, again, that's not even some of the things you're talking about that are truly life-threatening and could be tens of thousands of dollars. So I would say that's probably, I think, my biggest mistake I've made with my dogs. And certainly next time around, I will have pet insurance. Although,
Yeah.
like, I assume, like humans insurance, it doesn't cover all things or all of everything.
Right, right. I think I always tell my clients to call a couple companies, ask them a lot of questions because what insurance is going to be best for you is very independent, depends on the person, the dog, etc. But again, just having some kind of plan. If it's not insurance that is seems like it's going to work out for you, then just set aside some money
Mm-hmm.
every month so that, if something does happen or your dog does need some teeth out, even if it's, not life-threatening, that way you can do what's best for your dog and not have to sit there worrying about the financial aspect. You can worry about your dog's medical well-being.
So you wouldn't say that this particular company is best for everyone. It's really unique to the person, what their needs are, what their dog's like. They need to do
Correct.
that. I'm sure there are websites that can offer advice, but you really need to do the research.
Correct.
And can I ask you a quick teeth question? should
Sure.
should we be brushing our dog's teeth regularly?
We should. We really should be brushing them every day. I mean, it's very hard. If you can't brush daily, it may not be worth brushing at all. Plaque does kind of harden on and become permanent after 24 hours. So I do tell my clients like doing a little bit is better than nothing. But if you're brushing just a couple times a week, plaque is going to build up and your dog likely eventually will need a professional dental cleaning. There is a good website that I direct all of my clients to that's called the VOHC website, which was put together by a whole bunch of veterinary dentists and oral surgeons that has a list of approved products that can help promote good oral health. So there are a lot of things that you can do in addition to brushing. There's water additives and chew toys and bones and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Nothing that's going to replace brushing though.
So the same struggles you have with young kids, you basically have with dogs, except for dogs, it could be their whole life.
Exactly.
So you've mentioned obviously some, I'm sure these are all cases where you don't have all of your patients doing what you would like them to do with their dog and what you've advised them to do with their dogs. Are there other challenges? What are your biggest challenges as a veterinarian that you find, either with patients or just in any way?
Well, I mean, euthanasias are obviously inherently always difficult. So I think that's kind of a no-brainer challenge that comes with the territory. But at the same time, it's one of the things that I love about my job, because I love just being there for my clients and the pets who I've, well, sometimes for many, many years have developed a really strong relationship. So, it's kind of a double-edged sword.
I'm sure. I often say, and it's similar, that I find officiating funerals really meaningful. Not that I want someone to die, but when they passed away and that intensity of experience you get to share with the family members and the memory, it is a big part of why I became a rabbi and what I appreciate as a rabbi is being able to be with there. And it sounds very similar. It's traumatic for someone to lose their pet in the very end of their life, and to be able to be part of that, as hard as it is, must also, I imagine, be quite rewarding.
Yes, and it's very similar.
Are people typically there when they're euthanizing their pets? Are they typically with you?
Most people, I always give everyone the option to stay or leave. Sometimes people would rather not stay. For the most part, I think most people elect to stay. A fair amount of people will stay until their dog is, I will usually make them very sleepy and sedate first, and then put them actually to sleep after. So some people will elect to leave once the dog is really sedate. But it's really personal choice.
So what about the other side of being a vet? What's rewarding about being a vet? What do you really enjoy about it?
I think, again, just the relationships that I develop with both my clients and their pets. It's my favorite thing is to see a dog from day one when it's a puppy throughout all of the different stages of its life. I have made such great relationships with some of my long-term clients, and it's just so fun caring for those dogs throughout all their ups and downs throughout their lives.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your advice. Hopefully we will all be able to not just have enjoyed hearing from you, but have some good things that we can do with our own pets moving forward. I want to thank all of you for being here and for listening. I hope, like me, you enjoyed this and learned a lot. I hope you will all be back for our next episode. Shalom, Lehitro.
Hello, shalom friends. I'm Bo, one of Rabbi Robin's dogs and our original Mazel Pup. If you enjoyed today's podcast, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give us a pause and 5-star rating, and follow us on social media. Thanks for listening.